We're in an arena of some sort by the looks of things, and the crew of Voyager are getting friendly with the locals, judging by all those Starfleet uniforms. Down in the pit, an alien wearing neon gloves enters. Another follows, and this one looks a lot like a Hirogen. Maybe they've toned down those hunts to just fisticuffs since we last saw them. They do a bit of a fight, during which we learn the white discs on their front and back deliver a shock of some kind. The Hirogen wins, which isn't entirely unexpected when their whole culture revolves around combat, and the victory is witnessed by an entertained Chakotay and B'Elanna. We're here on shore leave, apparently, though Janeway's off to take her own somewhere else, so she's leaving Chakotay in charge. She's not the only one who's off elsewhere. While most of the crew are happy to remain here and sunbathe or watch alien martial arts, that titular TSUNKATSE, Seven and Tuvok are instead off to study some space fog. They're going in a shuttle rather than the Delta Flyer, which significantly increases their chances of running into trouble. We've only got one Delta Flyer, but who gives a shit if we lose a shuttle? Sure enough, they're approached by a ship, and one that's probably not friendly. The first clue is draining the shuttle's power. The second is teleporting a bomb on board. Oh dear. It must have been a friendly bomb, as Seven's still alive and being examined by this chap. That sounds like the voice of Star Trek regular Jeffrey Combs, he of Weyoun and Brunt from Deep Space Nine, so let's assume he's important and slap a name on the lad. The Wheel of Names, for those who are new here, contains suggestions by patrons of the channel, and whenever we come across someone interesting, there's a chance I'll roll it out. Jeffrey's new name is... Lieutenant Log Cabin, suggested by Commander M. Rowland. Lieutenant Log Cabin welcomes Seven to TSUNKATSE and tells her that her Borg upgrades are going to make her a very popular fighter in the games he runs. The fights, it seems, are not entirely voluntary. An injured Tuvok is brought to her, looking about as well as you'd expect for someone who took a kaboom to the face. He needs treatment, and he'll get it, says Log Cabin, in exchange for her fighting. The alternative is Tuvok himself being entered into a death match, something he's unlikely to win in his current condition, so she doesn't have a lot of choice in the matter. The involuntary nature of the fights must be a well-kept secret based on how into them the crew of Voyager have become. Either that, or talking about them is an elaborate excuse for Paris and Kim to be flirting. We go to watch some more, Neelix tagging along this time as a reason for Chakotay to explain the rules to both him and the viewer. It's basically what we've already figured out from watching: punch or kick those discs on the torso and make your opponent have a little nap as a result. The next match starts and the episode treats us to a cameo. He may be a wrestler known for his eyebrow game, but he's a mere amateur compared to a Vulcan. His opponent comes as somewhat of a surprise to our party, and after being unable to get Seven's attention, Chakotay calls Voyager and tells them to teleport her aboard. She's busy fighting Pebbles, or more accurately, her stunt double is. I presume the dogshit lighting in the arena was meant to hide this fact. Nothing says genuine sporting event quite like not being able to see what the fuck is going on. The teleporters are bust, largely because there's nobody to teleport. The fight is a hologram transmitted from somewhere else. Seven gets the upper hand, but hesitates to finish the job, giving Pebbles the chance to do it instead. The fight over, Chakotay and company return to Voyager to try and figure out what the bloody hell's going on. Chakotay's giving Janeway a call to update her, which coincidentally explains why Tuvok and Seven weren't using the Delta Flyer. The signal for the hologram of the fight, which is being transmitted to multiple planets, could be coming from a number of places, and it'll take time to find out where. Neelix is doing a diplomacy with the planet to try and find out what they know, too. Janeway's still a couple of days away, but is heading back now. Whether that'll be in time is another matter. Back in the arena holding room, Seven's being treated by the Hirogen we saw earlier. He's already done what he can for Tuvok, a fact that makes Seven relent and let him heal her when she awakens during treatment. Lieutenant Log Cabin arrives for a bit of being evil. He says the Borg aren't liked around these parts, which feels like something that shouldn't have to be said aloud. People have enjoyed watching Seven get smacked around, so he's putting her in a death match in 2 days' time. Interesting timing, that'll be when Janeway's back in the Delta Flyer. Anywho, the Hirogen knows the opponent she'll be facing and offers to train her. She's not fond of the prospect of killing someone in the arena, but she's even less fond of getting killed herself, so she agrees to the offer. To Voyager again, and Neelix is back from his diplomatic efforts. The officials on the planet didn't know about people being kidnapped for the fights, honest, and they'll definitely look into it, despite it being such a significant source of income for them. You can't bullshit a bullshitter, which is probably why Janeway appointed Neelix as an ambassador now that I think about it. Regardless, we won't be getting any help from the authorities. Just as well we figured out where those transmissions are coming from ourselves, then. It's not a planet, but a ship, and a big one, with lots of guns. We let Janeway know to rendezvous there before we go over for a little look. Seven's stunt double is showing us the benefits of the training she's received from her Hirogen friend. While she's been practicing, Tuvok's been dicking around with an easily accessible panel. He's learned a few things about the ship's systems, but can't control any of them from here. Lieutenant Logcabin arrives to start the fight, and as she leaves, Tuvok tells a somewhat hesitant Seven that she should make someone do a dead if that's the only way to survive. We go to the arena and await her opponent. Surprise! It's the Hirogen who's been training her. She assumes deception, but that's not the case. See, the Hirogen's been here now for 19 long years, and he's getting a bit sick of all this shit. That's why he trained her to beat him. Seems to me that not putting on a show would be a bigger fuck you to Lieutenant Logcabin, but maybe Hirogen culture prevents him from doing anything but fighting. While they're doing punchy times, Voyager's on the way. We arrive and Chakotay gives Lieutenant Logcabin a call. He doesn't deny having Tuvok and Seven, but then I guess he doesn't need to because he's got more guns than us. Chakotay wants them back, and Logcabin's counteroffer is that we go eat a big barrel of dicks. Then he hangs up. The Hirogen and Seven stunt double knock some more shit out of each other as Voyager starts pooping yellow at the ship they're on. Logcabin poops back, but we're able to bugger up one of his shields and teleport Tuvok out. Chakotay calls him in sickbay to ask about Seven, and he responds that she's in the arena fighting a deathmatch, probably somewhere near the top of the ship. Slight problem, that area has a shitload of shielding, so the same plan isn't going to work. Handily, Chakotay thinks of another. Let's bugger up the transmitters. If they can't broadcast, then there'll be no reason to continue the fight. It's a great plan, and we'd probably have made it work if we still had any functional guns, but Lieutenant Logcabin's ship has made sure that we don't. Not to worry, though, as those 2 days are up and the Delta Flyers arrived. Of course, those 2 days were for getting back to where Voyager was, not where we are currently, but let's ignore that for now. Janeway starts pooping yellow at those transmitters and kabooms one. It doesn't shut down the signal entirely, but Lieutenant Logcabin loses some of his audience, so he tries to boost power to the other dishes to compensate. More power to them means less power to the shield around the arena, and Kim thinks the teleports might maybe work now. That may not have been the original plan, but it'll do, which is just as well as Seven has won her match and is faced with the prospect of killing the Hirogen. She doesn't need to decide in the end, as due to the teleport being a bit difficult, we grab both of them at the same time before Voyager scarpers. I guess the other fighters on the ship can go fuck themselves. We're going to meet up with a Hirogen hunting party to hand over our guest, which is pretty generous considering that time they took over the ship and all. He asks Seven if she would have killed him, and she doesn't have an answer. The lack of certainty leaves her concerned that she hasn't made as much progress reclaiming her humanity as she'd hoped, a fear that she shares with Tuvok later. He points out that being bothered by these thoughts disproves them, and we leave her to chew on that as we fly away. You might have noticed that this one was a bit shorter than we've become accustomed to. That's because a not insignificant portion of it was completely fucking irrelevant. Multiple scenes where the crew talk about fighting without adding anything significant to the plot or their characters. A whole thread about Neelix getting sunburn. It's all padding, and I doubt they managed to convince anybody watching otherwise. It's an absolutely bizarre choice considering they'd lined up a known name to appear in the show as part of a crossover event with then WWF wrestling. Now, I'll grant you that the early 2000s were the start of Dwayne Johnson's professional acting career, and it would be a while before his inclusion gains the pull it has now, but he was still a household name from his wrestling. Indeed, a little research tells me this episode had the highest viewing numbers of the season when it first aired, which is a hell of a coincidence if it's not connected. You could even argue that wrestling and science fiction are comfortable bedfellows, what with both often being poorly written and badly acted, yet frequently treated with more reverence than they deserve. I still struggle to understand how Earth Final Conflict managed to get 5 whole seasons. Anyway, giving Dwayne a single scene so that the Doc can tell Neelix not to use a Leola root ointment for his sunburn is an entire fucking clown car of foolishness. Even switching his role with that of the Hirogen would have made a little more sense. It's possible they only had Dwayne for a single day's filming, or there's another production-related issue, but it still feels like a waste of a crowd-pleasing name, and I say that as someone who doesn't really care for the guy. To the story itself, and if you cut out all of the padding and the punchy bits that were put in to keep the wrestling fans entertained, it's another story about Seven reclaiming her humanity. Here she struggles with the concept of taking a life to save her own, which is certainly progress from that time she'd probably done a manslaughter by sending a member of the Number Species over to a Hirogen ship back in Season 4. The rest is nothing groundbreaking. The concept of future blood sports with unwilling contestants is certainly a well-trodden path, though I do wonder if the morally bankrupt overlord who treats his fighters like property was a knowing nod to Vince McMahon given the crossover. Whilst much of the episode is filler, it's all still competently done, and we're left with something that toes the line. Not bad, not good, just gets the job done, and is largely forgettable as a result. Let's end with the silence between Seven and Tuvok, and why neither of them would have felt compelled to fill it had she not acted on one of the Doc's many social lessons. It shows why Seven and Tuvok are comfortable around each other, of course. Their comparable positions that noise without purpose is just that. But it occurs to me that it also raises an interesting question, too. Were Vulcans originally created in the first iteration of Star Trek as a way of expressing neurodivergence before a time when we understood it as much as we do now? Science fiction has always attracted the spiciest brains, and there's no reason to believe that wouldn't have been the case back then, too. If I'm ever able to find the time, that might be worth a deeper look. End of episode.
Have you seen this bollocks?
The video?
No, that's normal. I mean the stuff in the corner up there.
Holy shit. There are more of them.
I know, right? I said he punches kittens and they give him cash. I mean, okay, I was a bit ambiguous over whether it was him or the kittens who had a gun, but that's no excuse. What's a kitten gonna do with a gun?
Well, there was that one time a kitten shot him.
Yeah, but that were funny.
True.
So how do we stop him? I mean, I had a whole skit done for the end of this video. Stuff about killing Paris. That isn't a joke, by the way. I genuinely already had one written and recorded. Now I've had to do this instead. All just because, say, Hook has got a loose wallet.
I've told you that's not how you read their names.
I know, but it's a running gag now, so I've got to do it. Point is, how do we stop more?
Reverse psychology, I guess. If they reward cruelty, just say he's nice.
Worth a go. He uses the money to give cake to hungry fish? Woof?